Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and Senior A English. We now turn in our hymnals to page 126, 127 and following, an introduction to Geoffrey Chaucer. Notice our dates here, 1343, although it's questioned as to exactly if that's the right year he was born, to 1400. We're going to now just work through this basic information, starting with some lines at the very beginning. Long had our dull forefathers slept supine, nor felt the raptures of the tuneful nine, till Chaucer first, a merry bard, arose, and many a story told in rhyme and prose. This stanza, written by author Joseph Addison in 1694, summarizes Geoffrey Chaucer's effect on English literature. Addison explains that the tuneful nine, that is to say the muses of the nine goddesses said to inspire the arts, were asleep in England until Chaucer awakened them with his poetry. Many centuries later, Chaucer is still recognized as the father of English poetry. Chaucer's literary standing. At a time when Italy was experiencing its Renaissance, England was still culturally in the Middle Ages. Italians, such as Dante, wrote in the vernacular, the language spoken by most Italians. English poets were still writing in French or Latin. Daringly, Chaucer wrote in the vernacular, even though he knew that Middle English was changing into a new form, modern English. Chaucer was an anomaly, though, and none of his contemporaries achieved his stature. For this reason, the 14th century was regarded as the false dawn of the English Renaissance. It was not until the time of Shakespeare in the 16th century that poets and playwrights writing in modern English created a true cultural rebirth. Chaucer's early career. Born in London to middle-class family, Chaucer was sent in his early teens to work as a page to King Edward III's daughter-in-law. Through this position, Chaucer became a member of the royal court, a position he retained for life. Chaucer's career began with drama and danger. He was only 16 years old when he was captured in France while fighting in the English army. He was released only after King Edward paid the 16-pound ransom, a testament to Chaucer's closeness to the king. By 1366, Chaucer married Philippa Penn, a lady-in-waiting to the queen. Chaucer's later career. Chaucer had an astonishingly busy life. He studied law and became a yeoman, a servant in the royal household. This position came with many responsibilities, including service as a diplomat and soldier. For a decade, he worked as a comptroller for the port of London, a demanding position. We sometimes think of him as the everyman, but we also think of him as an ambassador of a kind, right? Traveled, saw much of the world and the like. A poet for the ages, our next heading. Chaucer was in his early 20s when he began writing, basing his first poems on those of the European poets and translating French poems into Middle English. He completed his first major publication, the Book of the Duchess, probably in early 1369. As he continued to write, Chaucer made penetrating insights into human nature and displayed the sharp wit for which he is celebrated. Sharp wit. Out to the side you can write satire. We'll talk more about that. His works include The House of Fame, The Legend of Good Women, and Troilus and Cresside. But he's best known today for, of course, his masterpiece that we'll be studying together, the Canterbury Tales. Let's have more to say about that under the next heading. No one's sure what inspired Chaucer to write his major work, but some scholars theorize that the impetus came from a pilgrimage that he himself had taken, likely to the shrine of St. Thomas at Becket at Canterbury Cathedral, where Becket had been murdered in 1170. We read about that before. Whether Chaucer did indeed go on such a religious journey or not, he certainly could observe many pilgrims starting their journey as his home was situated on the road the pilgrims took to Canterbury. Now on to page 128, about the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales provide the best contemporary picture we have of 14th century England. Gathering characters from different walks of life, Chaucer takes the reader on a witty and revealing journey through medieval society. Our first heading, Society in the Middle Ages. Rich people, poor people, young people, old people, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, with all the diversity in any culture. You may wonder what single event could gather people from all parts of society. Chaucer found in his own society an orderly, even joyous event that gathered people from diverse backgrounds and occupations. A pilgrimage, a journey to a sacred spot. It's such a pilgrimage that gathers together the wildly diverse characters in the Canterbury Tales. The journey begins. Like modern travelers, medieval pilgrims wanted to while away the time pleasantly when traveling. Chaucer uses this custom to set his tale in motion. The Canterbury Tales begins with a prologue in which the narrator, presumably Chaucer himself, meets 29 other pilgrims at the Tavern Inn located in a London suburb. As the pilgrims prepare for their journey, Harry Bailey, the host of the inn, challenges each pilgrim to make the journey more entertaining by telling stories. 2 on the way to Canterbury, 2 on the way back. The pilgrim who tells the best story will be treated to a feast by the other pilgrims. The pilgrims accept the challenge, and Harry decides to join them and judge the competition. Each of the following sections of the poem consists of one of the pilgrims' tales, linked by brief transitions. As a result, the Canterbury Tales is actually a story about stories. 24 different tales set within the frame story of the pilgrimage. Snapshots of an era. In the prologue, Chaucer sketches a brief, vivid portrait of each pilgrim, creating a lively sense of medieval life, what we call character sketches, by the way. Chaucer begins his survey with the courtly world, which centered on the nobility. Medieval nobles, such as Chaucer's knight, held land granted them by a lord or king, for whom they fought in times of war. In the middle ranks of medieval society were educated professionals, such as Chaucer's doctor. The lower orders included craftsmen, storekeepers, and minor administrators, such as the reeve and the manciple. Chaucer also included the various ranks of the church, a cornerstone of medieval society, through the prioress and the sumner. Although Chaucer's fictional characters represent ranks and types, they come alive on the page as real people, individuals who defy type. For instance, although from outward appearances the merchant is wealthy, he's deeply in debt, a secret he keeps from his fellow travelers. Such breaks and stereotypes provide readers with even greater insights into the daily lives of medieval people. Literary background. The popular genres in Chaucer's day included romances, tales of chivalry, fabuleux, brief, bawdy, humorous tales, such as stories of saints' lives, sermons and allegories, narratives in which characters represent abstractions, such as pride or honor. Each pilgrim in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales chooses to tell a type of tale consistent with his or her character, and each of the major forms of medieval literature is represented. Chaucer wrote much of the tales using the form he created, the heroic couplet, a pair of rhyming lines with 5 stressed syllables each. Linguistic background for our final heading. The pronunciation of English underwent a major change between 1350 and 1700, called the Great Vowel Shift. Obviously, you're making notes here. The Great Vowel Shift. The pronunciation of all long vowels in Middle English underwent a transition. For example, before the Great Vowel Shift, bite in Middle English sounded like beat, and meat sounded like mate. Many of the inconsistencies of English spelling are a result of this shift. Okay, let's turn now and we'll move to the prologue of Chaucer's classic, The Canterbury Tales. Thank you.